President Trump struck a deal with the Europeans. The deal is that they're going to move towards no tariffs, no barriers and total free trade. Joining us now is Liam Fox. He's the UK Secretary of State for International Trade. Sir, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome to America and welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Would you want a similar deal between Britain and the United States? Total free trade, no barriers, no subsidies, no tariffs. You want it to be as strong as that?
We think that the world needs to move towards much greater trade liberalisation than we have. In fact, over this past decade, we've seen an increasing number of non-tariff barriers to trade being put in place by the G20 countries. That has had an effect on the growth of trade. It's picking up a bit this year, but we do need to have a much freer trading system. We need to go back to some of the ideals we had when the WTO came into being in 1995 and recognise the tremendous potential we have if we are willing to cut those barriers.
Well, how far are you prepared to go? I mean, Mr. Trump has outlined that he's working towards real free trade. As I said, no subsidies, no barriers, no tariffs. And again, would you go that far?
Oh, I'd like to go as far as possible. As you know, the UK can't negotiate anything while we're still members of the European Union. But as we leave, we will be able to do so. And I would like to see us create a much more free trade environment. And so if we can get our tariffs down, if we can get rid of some of the quotas that we have, and if we get rid of some of the non-tariff barriers, which are much more difficult to identify, that would be great. But sometimes they're a lot more representative of vested interests, and they're harder to get rid of.
Now, President Trump says you can't get that kind of trade deal between Britain and America unless the UK is out. I mean, but totally out of the European Union. So can you get out totally from the European Union on your exit date, which I think is March of next year?
Well, it depends on the deal that we get with the European Union itself. We've set out what we think is a very generous offer to the European Union. Of course, yesterday they rejected it. And the question really here is going to be this. Is this going to be a people's Brexit about the economies and the prosperity of the people of Europe, or is it going to be a bureaucrat's Brexit, which is all about the ideology of the unelected European Commission? Now, we want to see our European partners trade with us. They're an important, about 43% of our exports. But at the moment, it does seem as though that the European Commission are putting what I would call the theology of ever closer union ahead of the benefits of free and open trade between the United Kingdom and the rest of Europe. That would be a pity, and it would be damaging to all of us.
Do you think a crunch is coming? Because there's not that much time left to negotiate what is an exceptionally complex deal. Could you be right at the point where you say, we're leaving, we can't agree, we're gone? Could you ever see that?
Well, we have said that we will leave the European Union on the 29th of March next year. We would like there to be an agreement in place because that makes it easier for us all to trade with one another, and we're very important markets. But you have to remember that the United Kingdom has an almost £100 billion trade in goods deficit with the European Union. That means that they actually require access to our markets, and we think that if we don't get an agreement, that could be tremendously damaging to some economies, particularly Ireland or the Netherlands or Belgium. So we hope that sense prevails and we get an agreement. And remember, this is unlike any other trade agreement that has ever happened before, because we're beginning not only as major trading partners for one another, but with regulatory and legal identity. And it should be entirely possible for us to get that trade agreement as long as the politics of the European Union don't get in the way.
Now, I was born and raised in England. You can probably tell from my accent. I've lived in America for 40 years, but I was very much in favour of Brexit from a distance, from a distance. And I was in favour of it because I don't like the idea of the European continent having any input on the rules and the laws which govern Englishmen. So will you guarantee that we will get that the Brits, my former home country, will completely divorce from the Europeans when it comes to the rule of law?
Well, you and I both, the reason that I voted to leave the European Union and the reason I campaigned to leave the European Union was primarily about legal sovereignty. I couldn't accept that there was a legal authority above the courts in the United Kingdom. And to explain that to an American audience, it's like saying that there will be a court in Ottawa or Mexico City that will have ultimate authority over the Supreme Court. That wouldn't be tolerable here for a moment. And it wasn't tolerable to many of us in the United Kingdom. So for me, that's the main element. And what I want to see is, exactly as you described, that there is no legal authority over the United Kingdom as a sovereign nation. That, for me, was the entire point of leaving.
Sir, I'm going to ask you a question which I'm sure you will not wish to answer and probably can't answer. Would you like to see Boris Johnson Prime Minister?
Well, you know, in the British system, as you're well aware, everyone is touted as the next leader at some point. We're kind of on a rota for that with our media. But in general, I think it's not wise for anyone to tell the boss that they're going to be taking their job, especially when there's no vacancy.
Sir, you're a diplomat, I do declare. And that was a very, very good answer, sir. Liam Fox, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Please come and see us again anytime you're in America. Thank you, sir.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.